The night air smelled like wet asphalt and cheap smoke. A chain-link fence cut across the street like a hard line drawn by someone who hated crowds. Behind it, bright lights turned the yard into a white box. Cameras sat on poles. Loudspeakers hissed. Men in dark uniforms moved in rows with shields. A sign on the gate said, "Vought." The letters were clean. The place was not. A few dozen people had gathered outside the fence. Most were tired. Some were angry. Some looked like they had been walking for hours. They held phones up. They shouted. They begged. They argued with the guards. Then something changed. A door inside the fence swung open. A woman stumbled out, hands zip-tied. A guard yanked her forward. She slipped and fell. Her face hit the ground. The crowd surged. A rock hit the fence, then another. Someone threw a bottle. It shattered on the concrete and flashed with a small flame. The guards tightened. Batons came up. A stun weapon cracked. People screamed. For a moment, the guards actually started to lose the line. A group of protesters pushed right up to the fence and shook it hard. The gate rattled. One guard stepped back too far. His boot slid on the wet ground. He fell into another guard. 2 shields went down. A third guard reached for his gun. From across the street, Annie January watched from behind the hood of a plain jacket. She did not look like Starlight right now. No costume, no bright smile. Just a young woman with her hair tucked away and her shoulders tight. Her stomach twisted. She had seen crowds before. She had seen vote security before. She knew what came next if nobody stopped it. Vought would call it a riot. They would call the guards heroes. Then they would clean up the story, and anyone who got hurt would be forgotten. Annie's hands curled into fists inside her pockets. She wanted to step out. She wanted to yell, "Stop!" She wanted to make light in the air and force everyone to look at her instead of the fence. But she also knew the truth. If she showed herself here, Vought would own this moment too. They would make her part of their plan. They would twist her words. They would drag her into a press tour by morning. And still, she could not just watch. A guard raised his gun toward the crowd. Annie took a breath. That was when the darkness across the street did something wrong. At first, it looked like a patch of shadow near a closed storefront. That was normal. Streetlights always left broken shapes on the ground. Then the shadow lifted. It rose like a person standing up, but it did not move like a person. It was too smooth, like smoke that had learned how to walk. A tall figure stepped forward. It wore what looked like a long coat and a wide hat. The coat edges fluttered even though there was no wind. The figure's face was hard to see, not because it was hidden, because your eyes did not want to lock onto it. The figure crossed the street in 3 quiet steps. The guard with the gun froze like he felt cold water down his spine. The tall figure moved behind him. No loud punch, no big pose, just a sharp twist of the wrist. The gun clattered to the ground. The guard spun, shouting, and swung his baton. The baton hit empty air. The tall figure was already somewhere else. A second guard ran in with a shock weapon. He fired. Blue sparks jumped. The tall figure's coat flashed with the light. It did not fall. It turned its head, slow and calm, like it was disappointed. Then it was on the guard. Not brutal, not messy. Fast. Clean. Almost like a teacher ending a fight between kids. The guard hit the ground and stayed there, breathing but stunned. The crowd went silent. Even the people who had been shouting stopped. A kid near the fence whispered, "What is that?" Another person tried to answer, but the answer came out strange. The Specter. The word sounded too heavy for the street, like the air wanted to make it a big deal. Annie hated that her own skin prickled when she heard it. The tall figure looked at the crowd. Then it looked at the guards. It did not seem angry. It did not seem proud. It seemed focused. The figure stepped to the fence and placed one hand on the chain links. The shaking stopped. Not because the fence got stronger, because everyone holding it suddenly felt tired, like the urge to push drained out of their arms. The loudspeaker crackled. A tired voice barked, back up now." The tall figure tilted its head. Then it spoke. The voice was deep and clear, like it belonged in a serious movie. Enough. It should have sounded silly on a street full of phones and cheap jackets. It did not. The word landed like a rule. The guards stopped advancing. The crowd stopped pressing. Annie stared, her mouth slightly open. This wasn't a vote soup. Vought soups loved attention. They loved cameras. They loved control. This thing was acting like the opposite, like it did not care who saw it, as long as the harm stopped. A guard in charge, bigger than the others, pushed past his line. He pointed and shouted, "Who the hell are you?" The tall figure turned. For 1 second, Annie thought she saw eyes under the brim. Not glowing, not flashy, just present. The figure's voice dropped back into that dramatic tone. "I am what follows when you fail to stop it." Then, like it remembered it was talking to normal people, it added, almost casual, "Also, put the gun down." The guard's hand shook. He did not put it down. A new sound cut through the silence, a distant roar, like a jet, but closer. Annie's heart sank. She did not need to look up to know, but she did anyway. A shape hovered in the sky above the fence lights. A cape fluttered like a flag. A perfect face wore a small smile. Homelander. He hung there, slow and relaxed, as if the night belonged to him. His eyes locked on the tall figure. The smile did not reach his eyes. For the first time in a long time, Annie saw Homelander look at someone and not feel like the center of the world. He floated lower. The tall figure did not step back. Phones rose again. People started filming with shaking hands. Homelander's voice carried across the yard, bright and friendly in the worst way. "Well," he said, "this is new." The tall figure said nothing. Homelander dropped to the ground with a soft thump, like the earth was afraid to make noise. He glanced at the stunned guards, then at the crowd, then back at the tall figure. "Who are you supposed to be?" Homelander asked, still smiling. "Some kind of Halloween thing?" The tall figure's head turned a little. "The Specter," someone whispered again. Like their mouth could not help it. Homelander's smile tightened. Annie felt the pressure in the air shift, like a storm deciding where to hit. And the tall figure, the Specter, took one step forward, right toward Homelander, as if the idea of fear did not apply to it at all. Ashley Barrett hated messy footage. It made her job harder. It made the brand harder. It made her blood pressure go up. She stood in a clean, bright conference room high above the city. 3 screens showed the same shaky clip from 3 angles. The camera zoomed in and out like the person filming could not breathe. A patch of darkness rising, a tall coat, a hat brim, guards dropping like they were being turned off. And then Homelander, looking slightly confused. Ashley rubbed her forehead. "Okay," she said, forcing calm into her voice. "So, who is that?" A man from security cleared his throat. "We don't know. No ID, no record, not in our files." Ashley stared at him like he had insulted her. "Not in our files," she repeated, slower. Another person, one of the PR helpers, spoke up. "People online are calling him." She stopped, like the word felt weird in her mouth. Ashley snapped, "Spit it out." "The Specter," the helper said. The word came out like a movie trailer voice. The helper looked annoyed with herself right after saying it. Ashley's lips pressed together. "Great," she muttered. "A mystery man with a free brand name." On the far end of the table, A woman sat with perfect posture and calm eyes. She did not look like most vault people. She looked like she belonged in a classroom, not a boardroom. Sister Sage. She tapped a finger on the table. Slow. Names matter, Sage said. And this one is sticking. That tells me it is not just a nickname. It is a symptom. Ashley frowned. A symptom of what? Sage nodded at the screen where the shadow lifted off the ground. An event, Sage said. Anomaly, whatever you want to call it. Ashley hated the word anomaly. It felt like the universe not doing what it was paid to do. A senior PR guy leaned forward. We can spin this. Easy. We say he's an experimental hero. We say he's… No, Sage said. Soft but sharp. The room went quiet. Sage pointed at the frame where Homelander's smile tightened. If you claim him, you make him a rival product, Sage said. And Homelander will take that personally. Ashley swallowed. That part was true. And when Homelander took something personally, people died. So what do we do? Ashley asked. Sage looked at the screen again. We learn what he responds to, she said. We bait him. We control the setting. We control the story. Ashley nodded fast, like nodding could hold her life together. Right, she said. Okay. Great. We do that. She turned to security. I want every camera angle from the camp, every body cam, every drone, every phone clip. I want sound. I want words. I want anything that tells me what this thing wants. Security hesitated. Ma'am, there's something else. Ashley's eyes narrowed. What? The guards say, the man started, then stopped like he felt stupid. They say their hands went weak, like they forgot why they were attacking. Ashley blinked. Sage's eyes sharpened. Interesting, Sage said. Ashley forced a laugh that sounded like a cough. Sure, she said. Interesting. I love interesting. On the screen, Homelander stepped closer to the tall figure. Ashley watched that moment again. Homelander was not afraid. Homelander did not do fear, but he was not in control. Ashley did not like the feeling of not in control either. She grabbed her phone. Get Homelander, she said. Now. Huey Campbell sat in a cramped room that smelled like old coffee and cheap cleaning spray. It was the kind of place where the lights always felt too bright and also too sad. A safe house, a hiding place, a place where normal life went to die. Mother's Milk stood near a table with a laptop. Frenchie hunched over a second screen, squinting at pixel blocks like he could bully them into becoming clearer. Kimiko sat on the floor, quiet, her eyes always moving. Butcher paced. He always paced when he wanted to hit something but couldn't. Huey had seen the video about 8 times now. Each time his skin crawled in a new way. The Shadow Man, the coat, the hat, the guards falling. And then, the whisper. The Specter. Huey looked down at his phone and tried to type it. S-P-E-C. His phone froze for half a second. Then it finished the word for him. But it did it wrong. Not wrong letters. Wrong feeling. The text came out with strange spacing and capital shapes, like it was trying to look serious. The Specter. Huey stared. He deleted it. Typed again. Same thing. He swallowed. Huey said. Butcher stopped pacing and snapped. What? Huey held up the phone. My phone is being weird. Butcher stared at it like Huey had shown him a cursed toy. Frenchie leaned in. What is this? I typed it normal, Huey said. It changed it. Frowned. Autocorrect? I turned autocorrect off, Huey said. Because autocorrect hates me. Kimiko leaned over and looked, her brows lifted. She made a small sound in her throat like she was amused and unsettled at the same time. Butcher snorted. So the spooky shadow man comes with spooky spelling. Great. Huey felt his voice shake. He showed up near a vault camp Butcher. He took guards down like they were nothing. And Homelander, Butcher cut him off. Homelander didn't look happy. Nodded. That's the part that matters. Butcher turned back to the screen. Tell me what you see. Huey watched again. The figure did not pose. It did not play to the crowd. It did not wave. It stopped violence. That was it. Huey tried to explain what bothered him. It's like, Huey said, then stopped, searching for words a fifth grader could understand, because his brain did that when he was scared. It's like it has one job, one rule: stop the bad thing. Frenchie tapped the screen. Look here. He zoomed in on a frame when the figure put its hand on the fence. See the people? Frenchie said. They stopped pushing at the same time, like someone turned the anger down. MM's jaw tightened. Mind control? Huey shook his head. It didn't feel like a soup show-off move. It felt like calm. Butcher laughed, sharp and mean. Calm. In this world, that's new. Huey forced himself to keep going. And everyone keeps saying the name like they're whispering in a church. Butcher's eyes flicked to Huey. That's not funny. Huey blinked. I didn't say it was funny. It's not funny because it means it's not just people being stupid, Butcher said. It means it's doing something. Frenchie sat back. Maybe it is a concept, not only a person. Huey stared at him. A what? Frenchie shrugged. Like an idea that learned to punch. Butcher's lips curled. Well, if it punches Homelander, I'm ready to believe in ideas. Stepped between them, calm but firm. We don't know what it is. We don't know what it wants. We don't know if it helps or if it hurts. Butcher leaned forward. We do know one thing. What? said. Butcher pointed at the screen where Homelander landed. Homelander saw it, Butcher said, and he didn't like it. Huey felt a cold drop in his chest, because he could imagine the next step. Homelander didn't like being challenged. Homelander didn't like not being the strongest thing in the room. Homelander didn't like not being loved. And when Homelander didn't like something, he broke it. Huey cleared his throat. So what do we do? Butcher's smile was all teeth and no warmth. We find it first, he said, and we figure out how to point it. MM's eyes narrowed. Point it like a gun. Butcher didn't deny it. Huey looked down at his phone again. The Specter stared back at him from the screen, like the word itself was listening. Annie stood on a rooftop 2 blocks from the camp, looking down at the fence lights like they were stains on the ground. Her hands shook. Not from cold, from anger. She had seen Homelander's face when he landed. The small smile, the false warmth, the hunger underneath. And she had seen the other thing too. Homelander's brief pause. Homelander's tiny moment of, what is this? That could be dangerous. Homelander didn't do well with surprises. Annie pulled her hood down and took out her phone. She did not have many people she trusted, but she had Huey. She typed, "Are you seeing this?" Then she hesitated. Because she didn't want to type the name, she tried anyway. S-P-E. Her phone finished it in that same weird way. The Specter Annie's throat tightened. She deleted it. She typed, "Shadow Guy." That stayed normal. She sent it. A second later, Huey's reply popped up. Yes, why is my phone dramatic? Annie almost laughed. Almost. She typed, "It's not just you." Then she stopped. Her eyes moved back to the camp. The street was calmer now. Guards were resetting their line. Protesters were backing away. The woman who had fallen earlier was gone, probably dragged back inside. Like she never existed. Annie's nails dug into her palm. The tall figure had stopped the fight, but it had not changed the system. Not yet. Annie thought about the way it moved, the way it didn't seem interested in applause, the way it spoke like a rule. It felt different from Soup's. Not better in a simple way, different in a scary way, like it didn't have the same human limits. Annie made a choice. She would try to meet it, not as Starlight the brand, as Annie, a person. She looked at the street below, then at the darker alleys that cut between buildings. "If you show up again," she whispered, even though nobody could hear, "I'm going to talk to you first." She didn't know if it could hear, but the words made her feel less helpless. A soft sound reached her ears, not footsteps, not wings, just a shift in the air. Annie turned fast. The rooftop behind her was empty. Then, for a blink, it wasn't. A tall shadow stood near the stairwell door, like it had always been there. Annie's breath caught. She did not scream. She forced herself not to. She took one step back and lifted her hands, palms open. "I'm not here to fight," she said, voice steady. The figure tilted its head. The brim of the hat hid most of the face, but Annie felt the attention like a weight. The voice came, deep and clear. "Then why are you near the place where harm gathers?" Annie swallowed. "Because I'm trying to stop it." The figure's coat shifted, like smoke remembering it was cloth. "You failed," it said. Annie flinched. She hated that it was true. "I know," she said. "I'm trying again." For a moment, the figure said nothing. Then it asked a question that made Annie's stomach drop. "Why do the ones with power guard the cage?" Annie looked away toward the camp. "Because they get paid," she said. Bitter. "Because they like control. Because they're scared. Because it's easy." The figure's voice stayed calm. "And you?" Annie's chest tightened. "I used to get paid too." That landed between them like a heavy box. The figure took one slow step closer. Annie's muscles tensed on instinct. She didn't move. The figure spoke again, quieter. "This world's uniforms do not match its justice." Annie nodded. "Yeah, welcome to my life." The figure's head turned slightly, as if listening to something far away. Sirens, radios, a helicopter. And then the figure said, almost like it was annoyed, "They are about to escalate again." Annie's eyes widened. "Who?" The figure did not answer. It moved toward the edge of the roof. Annie rushed after it. "Wait, what are you?" The figure paused just long enough to speak. The answer came out in that dramatic tone again, like it couldn't help it. "I am the response." Then, like it remembered Annie was human, it added, simple, "Stay back. You are not built for what's next." Annie's face hardened. "Don't tell me what I'm built for." The figure did not argue. It stepped off the roof. Annie lunged forward, heart hammering, but it didn't fall. It dropped into the shadow between buildings, and the shadow swallowed it. Annie stood at the edge, breathing hard, staring into the dark. Down below, far toward the camp, she heard shouting start again. And above it, she heard something worse, a bright, cheerful voice over loudspeakers, "Homelander." Annie's stomach turned to ice. Vaught's plan was simple, because Vaught loved simple. Simple meant controllable. Simple meant sellable. A bright street in the city, a crowd, cameras, a crime that would look scary but not too scary, a rescue that would look heroic but not too heroic, a story. They built the set like it was a movie. They hired actors who would scream on cue. They placed hidden cameras on rooftops, inside lampposts, and behind fake billboards. They even planted a few random civilians with perfect angles and perfect reactions. In the middle of it all, a fake armored truck sat with its back doors open. Inside were boxes marked medical supplies. Vaught wanted the world to see someone trying to steal medicine. They wanted the world to want a hero. Ashley stood in a van with a headset and a tablet, watching feeds. Sister Sage sat beside her, calm as always. Ashley's hands trembled on the tablet. She hated that. "Are you sure this will work?" Ashley asked. Sage didn't look up. "We saw when it appeared. Night. Conflict. Law enforcement losing control. It reacts to the pattern." Ashley swallowed. "And if it doesn't show?" Sage finally looked at her. "Then it is not what we think, and we try something else." Ashley did not like that answer. It sounded too much like reality. A voice crackled in her headset. "Targets in place. Security on standby." Ashley nodded, even though nobody could see. "Copy." Outside, the actors started their part. 3 men in masks ran toward the truck, waving guns that looked real enough on camera. They shouted, "Move! Move! Hands up!" The crowd screamed. The planted civilians began to cry and point and back away. Vought security moved in and played the struggling part, letting the masked men push them back, letting the scene look like it was getting out of control. Ashley watched, teeth clenched. "Okay," she whispered. "Come on, come on." A shadow moved at the edge of camera 4. Ashley leaned closer. The image darkened for a second, like the lens blinked. Then the tall figure stood in the street. A long coat, a wide hat, a face that didn't want to be seen. Ashley's mouth opened. "It's here," she breathed. Even saying "here" felt dramatic. On the street, the masked men froze for half a second. They had not been told about this part. Their fear was real. One of them raised his gun at the tall figure. "Back off!" he shouted, voice cracking. The tall figure did not back off. It stepped forward. The closest security guard, an actual guard this time, slipped and fell. He had been pretending to lose. But his boot caught on something. He went down hard. That was the moment the pattern became real. Law enforcement losing. Night. Fear rising. The tall figure moved. It disarmed the masked man with a fast twist and a hard strike to the arm. The gun hit the ground and spun away. It grabbed the second masked man by the shoulder, spun him, and shoved him down onto the pavement. The third masked man fired into the air, panicking. The tall figure vanished for a blink and appeared behind him. A short, clean Ooter, fast enough that the cameras barely caught it, sent the man down. The crowd screamed again, but it was a different scream now, not just fear. Awe. Ashley's headset crackled with another voice, sharp and pleased. "Well," Homelander said, "there you are." Ashley's blood turned cold. She hadn't told him the exact time. She hadn't wanted him here yet. But Homelander did what he wanted. The sky camera tilted up. Homelander hovered above the street like a shining statue. He wore the perfect smile. He always wore the perfect smile when he wanted to own the moment. He dropped down, cape fluttering, landing a few steps from the tall figure. The crowd's phones turned toward him automatically. Then, some of them turned back, because the tall figure didn't flinch. Homelander's smile twitched. He held his arms out a little, like he was greeting a fan. "Hey," Homelander said, voice bright. "Great entrance, really. Very moody." The tall figure stood still. Homelander tilted his head, like he was choosing how to play it. "You're not in the system," Homelander said. "So that means you're either a problem or you're a new toy." The tall figure spoke, voice deep. "Put your hands down." A hush fell over the crowd again. Homelander laughed softly, like someone had told him a joke at a party. "Or what?" he asked. Starlight was there too, but not in costume. Annie stood at the edge of the crowd, heart pounding, trying to see without being seen. She watched Homelander lean in. She watched the tall figure not move. Annie felt the tension in the air like a stretched wire. Homelander's smile sharpened. "You know," he said, "I'm the one who saves people around here." The tall figure's head tilted. "Then do it," it said. Homelander's eyes narrowed. He hated being told what to do. He hated being tested. He glanced past the tall figure, toward a random civilian crying near a storefront. Ashley's planted actress. Homelander walked right up to her. The woman's eyes widened. She hadn't been told he would do this either. Homelander put a hand on her shoulder, gentle as a dad in a photo. Then he squeezed. Not enough to break her, just enough to make her gasp and bend in pain. He looked back at the tall figure while he did it. "See?" Homelander said, still smiling. "I can stop anything. I can also start anything." Annie felt sick. The tall figure moved. It did not rush Homelander like a hothead. It moved like a rule snapping into place. One moment it was 2 steps away. The next, it was between Homelander and the woman. Homelander blinked. The tall figure didn't grab him. It didn't plead. It pushed Homelander's wrist away from the woman with one sharp motion. Homelander's hand slid off like it hit a wall. Homelander's smile vanished. For a second, his face was blank. Then the anger rose, bright and ugly. "You touched me," he said, voice low. The tall figure's voice stayed even. "You were harming a civilian." Homelander's eyes burned red. Twin lines of heat shot forward. The beams cut the street like knives. They hit the tall figure's coat. And the coat did not catch fire like normal cloth. It flashed, dark edges glowing for a heartbeat, and the figure stepped aside, like it knew the beams were coming before Homelander decided to fire. The heat sliced through a parked car behind it. Metal melted. Tires popped. The car sagged and smoked. The crowd screamed and scattered. Annie shoved people back, shouting, "Move! Move!" Homelander swung his head, tracking the tall figure with the beams. The tall figure moved fast, but not like a speedster sprinting. It moved by appearing where the dark was, behind a street sign, under a building shadow. Beside a lamppost, always close, always in the way of harm. Homelander snapped, "Stop moving!" He lunged forward and threw a punch that would have shattered a normal man. The tall figure caught the punch, not with a loud block. With a hard grip on the wrist, the street cracked under their feet. Annie's eyes widened. She had seen Homelander punch through walls, through people, through steel. This thing was holding him. Homelander snarled and drove his other fist forward. The tall figure let go of the first wrist and slid back, making Homelander's punch hit air. Homelander stumbled one step, more from surprise than balance. The tall figure struck. A short, clean punch to the side of Homelander's jaw. It was not a flashy hit, but the sound was heavy. Homelander's head snapped to the side. He didn't fall. He didn't even stagger much. He just froze. Because almost nobody made his head move like that. The crowd saw it too. Phones kept filming even as people ran. Homelander's face shifted, like something inside him cracked. Then he exploded forward. He grabbed the tall figure by the coat front and yanked. The coat stretched like cloth and smoke at the same time. Homelander slammed the tall figure into the side of the armored truck. Metal dented inward. The truck rocked. Homelander raised his fist to punch again. The tall figure's hand shot up and caught Homelander's forearm, not stopping it fully, just redirecting it. Homelander's fist smashed into the truck's steel frame instead of the figure's head. The frame crumpled. Homelander's eyes widened again, fast. The tall figure spoke, calm as a teacher. "Stop." Homelander's laugh came out sharp and wrong. "Oh," he said. "You're telling me stop. You think you can tell me stop." He leaned close, teeth bared. "I am the law," Homelander hissed. The tall figure's head tilted slightly. "No," it said. "You are a threat." That line landed like a slap. Homelander's eyes flared red again. He fired point blank. The heat hit the tall figure's chest. The coat glowed bright at the center, like a coal under black fabric. Annie screamed without meaning to, but the tall figure did not burn into a screaming pile. It bent backward with the force, sliding along the truck, coat smoking at the edges. Then it stepped into the shadow under the truck and vanished. Homelander's beams cut empty air. He spun, scanning, jaw tight. The tall figure appeared behind him, not attacking, just standing there, as if it wanted Homelander to feel watched. Homelander whipped around and punched. The punch hit the tall figure's shoulder. This time, the figure moved with it. It slid back across the pavement, coat dragging. The hat stayed on. The posture stayed calm. It did not look hurt like a human, but it did look pressured, like the blow mattered, even if it didn't break it. Homelander smiled again, but it was not friendly. "There," he said. "You can be hit." "Good." He rushed forward, grabbing for the hat. The tall figure snapped a hand up and caught Homelander's wrist again. Their grips locked. Homelander's muscles tightened. The air around them felt hot, like the street was holding its breath. The tall figure leaned in. For the first time, Annie heard something like strain in its voice. Not pain, effort. "You cannot own this," it said. Homelander's face twisted. "I own everything." The tall figure's other hand lifted, pointing past Homelander. "Look." Homelander's eyes flicked, just for a second. And in that second, a real problem happened. One of the masked actors, terrified and confused, grabbed a dropped gun and aimed at the fleeing crowd. He was not supposed to do that. But fear makes people stupid. He fired. A woman screamed and fell. Annie's heart slammed against her ribs. The tall figure moved. It was gone from Homelander's grip like smoke slipping through fingers. It appeared between the shooter and the crowd. It swung its arm once. The gun flew out of the shooter's hand, spinning high and landing in a storm drain with a loud clank. The shooter stared at his empty hand, like it had betrayed him. The tall figure grabbed him by the collar, lifted him half off the ground, and set him down hard on his knees, not killing him, stopping him. Homelander landed beside them with a boom that cracked the pavement. He looked at the fallen woman and the screaming crowd, annoyed. He looked at the tall figure, furious. "You're ruining my scene," Homelander said. The tall figure's voice stayed low and steady. This was never a scene. Ashley watched from the van, face pale. Sage watched too, eyes cool. "See?" Sage murmured. "It prioritizes harm, not image." Ashley swallowed. "How do we control it?" Sage's gaze stayed on the screen. "We don't. Not directly." Ashley's throat went dry. "Then what do we do?" Sage's mouth curved slightly, almost like pity. "We control what counts as harm," she said. On the street, Homelander stepped closer. His voice turned sweet, like poison with sugar. "You know," he said to the tall figure, "you could be on my team. People would love you. I could make you famous." The tall figure did not answer right away. It looked at the crowd. It looked at the guards. It looked at the cameras. Then it looked back at Homelander. "I do not serve you," it said. The crowd heard it. Even if they didn't understand it, they heard the refusal. Homelander's smile fell away. He leaned in close, eyes bright with rage. "You will," he whispered, "or you won't be." His eyes flared red again, and Annie felt her body move before her brain did. She stepped out of the crowd, pushing forward, ready to shout, ready to blind him with light if she had to. But she never got the chance. The tall figure turned, fast. It stepped into the deepest shadow on the street, right where two building lights didn't meet. And it was gone. No smoke, no flash, no sound, just absence. Homelander's beams cut the empty space where it had been. He stood there, breathing hard, fists clenched, looking around like the world had insulted him. The crowd kept running, phones kept recording, and Homelander, for the first time in a long time, looked like he had been left behind. Annie stood still, chest heaving. She stared at the shadow line where the figure had vanished. Huey's text buzzed in her pocket. Did it just disappear on him? Annie looked down at her phone. She tried to type back, "Yes!" Her phone froze for half a second, then popped a suggestion across the screen. The Specter Annie's hand tightened around the phone. She didn't know what that thing was. She didn't know where it came from. But she knew one simple truth. Homelander had just met something that did not fear him, and Homelander was going to make the whole world pay for that. By morning, the whole city felt like it was waiting for someone to blink first. The video was everywhere, on phones, on TV screens in diners, on giant displays in stores. A tall shape in a long coat. Guards falling like someone had switched them off. A crowd whispering the same name like they could not help it. And then Homelander, standing there with his smile broken for half a second. Vought's morning show started on time anyway. The hosts sat under soft lights, with perfect teeth and perfect hair. The headline on the screen behind them read, "A new hero? A new threat?" They played the clip 3 times. They slowed it down and zoomed in until the pixels looked like a painting. They said the word Specter like it was already in their script. In a clean office high above the city, Ashley Barrett watched the show with a cold cup of coffee in her hand. She didn't drink it. She just held it like it could stop her hands from shaking. "Look at them," Ashley muttered. "Look at the smile." A PR guy beside her nodded quickly. "We're steering it, Ashley. We're steering it." Ashley turned and snapped. "Are we?" On a second screen, social media rolled like a river you couldn't dam. People arguing, people joking, people afraid. People posting the same word again and again. The Specter. Every time Ashley saw it, she hated it more. The word looked like it belonged on a movie poster, not a phone screen. Sister Sage sat across the room with a tablet in her lap. Calm. Still. Like the chaos was weather, and she had an umbrella. Ashley looked at her. "You said we control the story." Sage didn't look up. "We do. Most of it." "Most of it," Ashley repeated, voice sharp. "That's not enough for Homelander." Sage finally raised her eyes. "Then don't aim for enough. Aim for useful." Ashley swallowed. "Useful how?" Sage tapped the screen, pausing on the moment the crowd turned their phones away from Homelander and toward the tall figure. "Attention is oxygen," Sage said. "He is used to breathing all of it." Ashley's throat tightened. "So what do we do?" Sage's face stayed blank. "We give him a way to win. We give him a way to look bigger than this." Ashley let out a breath. "We can stage a bigger rescue." Sage nodded once. "Yes, but that is for Homelander." Ashley leaned forward. "And for the Specter?" Sage's finger slid to another tab. A list of phrases. A list of laws. A list of headlines. "Words," Sage said. "Rules. Labels." Ashley frowned. "You're losing me." Sage spoke like she was explaining homework. "This thing," she said, "is not reacting to fame. It reacted to a pattern. Night. Conflict. Law enforcement losing. Harm rising. It arrived and stopped it." Ashley's stomach turned. "So we stop the pattern." "No," Sage said. "We control the meaning inside the pattern." Ashley stared. "Meaning." Sage tapped a headline draft. "New domestic terror cells target vital services." Then another. "Vought Security named official emergency partner." Then another. "Public Safety Act expands arrest powers during crisis." Ashley's lips parted. "You wanna..." Sage finished for her. I want the public to accept that the people we pick are law. I want protests to be crime. I want whistleblowers to be thieves. I want anyone who threatens us to be treated as the problem. Ashley's voice went small. So if it shows up, it stops the crime. Sage nodded. Or it doesn't show up because law enforcement is never allowed to lose in public. Ashley felt her stomach drop again. And if it refuses to follow our labels? Sage's eyes cooled. Then we don't fight it with muscles. Ashley forced a laugh. What do we fight it with? Sage looked at the rolling feed of people posting, laughing, arguing, panicking. We fight it with belief, Sage said. We make the world question what crime even is. And if the world doesn't agree, the concept cracks. Ashley stared at her. That's insane. Sage's mouth twitched, almost amused. Yes. Ashley's phone buzzed. A message. Homelander wants a meeting. Now. Ashley's blood ran cold. Homelander didn't wait in the conference room. He waited in the hallway outside it, like the room wasn't worthy. 2 Vault employees stood nearby, pretending not to shake. One held a tablet. One held bottled water. Neither dared offer him anything. Ashley walked up with Sage beside her. Homelander turned his head slowly. His smile was back. Perfect. Bright. But his eyes were not. What was that? Homelander asked. Ashley tried to keep her voice light. A situation. A one-off. We're handling it. Homelander stepped closer until Ashley could smell his clean cologne. You staged a scene, he said softly, and I walked into it. In front of cameras. Ashley swallowed hard. We didn't know you were coming. Homelander's smile tightened. I come when I want. Sage spoke, calm and respectful. You did well. Homelander glanced at her like she was a new object on a shelf. Who are you? Sister Sage, she said. Strategy. Homelander nodded like he didn't care, but he did. He always did. He looked back at Ashley. That thing hit me. Ashley's skin went numb. Homelander leaned in, voice still sweet. It hit me, Ashley. Ashley nodded quickly. Yes, but it ran. Homelander's eyes narrowed. It didn't run. It disappeared. Like it thought it could leave whenever it wants. Ashley's mouth went dry. We can track. Homelander cut her off. No. He looked down the hallway at nothing, like he was imagining a future. I want it found, Homelander said. I want it brought to me. I want it in a room where it can't do its little magic trick. Ashley forced air into her lungs. We're working on that. Homelander's smile widened again. And Ashley, he added, almost friendly, I want the world to stop saying that name like it's special. Ashley nodded so fast it hurt her neck. Of course. Homelander turned away like the meeting was over. Then he stopped and looked back at Sage. You said strategy, he said. Sage nodded. Yes. Homelander's eyes flicked, bright with heat. If you embarrass me. Sage didn't flinch. Then you will punish me. Homelander stared at her for a long second. Then he smiled, satisfied. Good. You understand. He walked off down the hallway, cape swaying. Ashley only breathed again after he was gone. She looked at Sage. You're insane. Sage looked back. Yes. Ashley's voice shook. If he loses patience, he'll... I know, Sage said. That is why he must feel like he is winning. Ashley rubbed her face. Then make him win. Sage glanced at the screens again. I will, she said. In public. Her eyes sharpened. And I will make the Specter lose, she added, without ever throwing a punch. In a different part of the city, in a much uglier building, Billy Butcher watched the same clips with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. He sat on a stained couch with his boots on the table like the rules didn't matter. Huey sat across from him, shoulders hunched. stood by the window, arms crossed, looking out like he expected the world to crash through it. Frenchie clicked through frames again. Kimiko perched on the arm of a chair, silent, watching everyone like she could see what they wouldn't say. Butcher paused the clip right after the Specter's punch turned Homelander's head. "There," Butcher said. "That's the money shot." Huey swallowed. "Yeah, great. Awesome. We all die now." Butcher chuckled. "Nah, not now. Not if we're clever." MM's voice was flat. "You're thinking of using it?" Butcher looked at him like MM had said something obvious. "Of course I am." Huey's phone buzzed. A message from Annie. "Vought is spinning it already. Be careful." Huey typed back. "I'm always careful. I am a careful person." His phone tried to suggest a word under it. "The Specter." Huey groaned out loud. "Stop doing that." Butcher glanced at him. "Your phone acting up again?" "Yes," Huey snapped. Then he regretted the tone, because snapping at Butcher usually went bad. Butcher just smirked. "Even your phone's got drama now." "How nice." MM leaned in. "Focus." Butcher's eyes stayed on the screen. "You know what's funny?" Frenchie didn't look up. "In your mouth, that is always dangerous." Butcher ignored him. "That thing doesn't care about cameras, doesn't care about fans, doesn't care about money." MM's jaw tightened. So it's a knife that doesn't get distracted," Butcher said. "It's a blade that swings at crime, whatever it thinks that is." Huey frowned. "That's the problem. What does it think crime is?" Butcher's smile faded a little. "Anything we tell it." MM shook his head hard. "No, that's not how it looked. It didn't follow orders. It didn't even talk much." Butcher leaned forward. "You're missing the point." He tapped the screen on the moment the Specter stepped between Homelander and the woman. "It saw harm," Butcher said. "It stopped harm. It sees people with guns and power, and it steps in. That's what it does." Huey felt his throat tighten. "So what happens if it looks at us and decides we're the harm?" Silence fell. Kimiko's eyes flicked to Huey, then to Butcher. MM's stare sharpened. "That's the right question." Butcher's voice went colder. "We don't give it a reason." Huey swallowed. "But you do harm sometimes, Butcher." Butcher's eyes didn't move. "Yes." Huey's voice got smaller. "So how do you know it won't—" Butcher cut him off. "Because I'm not wearing a cape. I'm not building camps. I'm not smiling while I crush people." MM snapped. "You're still you." Butcher's grin returned. "And that's why we plan." He stood up and walked to the table where Frenchie had printed screenshots. "We find where it appears," Butcher said. "We watch the night. We follow the pattern. We get close without being seen." MM shook his head. "And then what? You ask it nicely to fight Homelander?" Butcher's eyes gleamed. "Something like that." Huey felt his stomach twist. He thought about the Specter's voice in the clip, deep, calm, like a rule. He thought about Homelander's face when it disappeared, rage and embarrassment mixed together. Huey looked at MM. If Homelander is embarrassed, he gets worse. MM nodded slowly. "That's what scares me," Frenchie muttered. "And Vought will make this into law." Butcher looked at him. "What do you mean?" Frenchie pointed to the morning news, where a politician shook hands with a Vought spokesperson. "See?" Frenchie said. "They will call this public safety. They will give Vought more power. Always." Huey's blood went cold. Because he could see the trap forming. If Vought became the law, then anyone who fought them would be called a criminal. And if the Specter followed the law— Huey whispered, "Oh no." Butcher looked at him. "What?" Huey held up his phone. Annie says they're spinning it already. They'll make everyone who resists them look like a villain. And then, if that thing is really about crime. Butcher's smile faded. Spoke, quiet but heavy. Then it might show up and stop us. Kimiko's hand moved in a fast sign, sharp and clear. Frenchie translated softly. Or, it might stop the idea of resisting at all. Huey blinked. What? Frenchie's eyes looked tired. If it is what I think, an idea that punches, an idea can break other ideas. Huey felt dizzy. Butcher slammed a hand on the table. Enough! He looked around the room, voice hard. We don't panic, Butcher said. We find it first. We speak to it first. We make sure it sees the real criminals. Stared at him. And if it decides you're one of them? Butcher's smile came back, thin and sharp. Then I'll take my chances, he said. Huey didn't like the way that sounded at all. That night, Annie moved through the city with her hood up and her heart pounding. She stayed off main streets. She stayed away from cameras. She avoided Vaught's patrol cars like they were poison. It was hard, because the city had more patrol cars now. Vought logos flashed on doors like they owned the roads. Annie passed a billboard that said, Vought security keeps you safe. She clenched her jaw. Across the street, a group of teenagers argued near a convenience store. One grabbed a candy bar and shoved it in his pocket. The cashier shouted. The teen laughed and walked out. A Vought guard on the corner watched it happen. He didn't move. The cashier looked at him like, Aren't you going to do something? The guard shrugged. Annie slowed, confused. A few steps later, she saw a man shove another man into a wall and snatch his phone. The victim yelled. People looked. Nobody stepped in. Annie's skin prickled. This wasn't normal fear. Fear was normal here, sure, but this was different. It was like the city was getting used to it. Like people were starting to think, crime just happens. Don't bother. Annie's chest tightened. She remembered the Specter's words on the roof. This world's uniforms do not match its justice, she whispered. Is this what you meant? She kept walking. Her phone buzzed. A message from Huey. I'm seeing weird stuff. Cops not caring. Is that him? Annie typed back. I don't know, but I see it too. She tried not to type the name. Her phone suggested it anyway, like a pushy friend. The Specter, Annie deleted the suggestion and shoved the phone into her pocket. She reached a rooftop overlooking a courthouse. Not a big, fancy one. A tired one. Brown brick. Old windows. A flag that looked faded. She didn't know why she came here. Maybe because court was supposed to be where justice lived. And if something was messing with the idea of stopping crime, this place would feel it. Annie crouched near a vent and watched. Police cars pulled up. People in handcuffs got led inside. Some were loud. Some were quiet. A man in a suit walked in like he owned the building. A guard held the door for him. A woman with a bruised cheek followed behind, eyes on the ground. Annie's stomach tightened. Then she felt it. A drop in temperature. A shift in the air. The shadow near the courthouse steps deepened, even though the streetlights didn't change. And the tall figure stood there, half in darkness, half in light. The Specter. Annie held her breath. It didn't look at her. It didn't look at the street. It looked at the courthouse doors like it was listening to something inside. Then it walked forward. Not fast, not sneaky, just steady. It stepped into the building like it belonged there. Annie's heart slammed. She didn't follow right away. She waited 3 seconds. Then she moved. Inside the courthouse, the air smelled like paper and old sweat. Annie slipped through a side hallway, staying low and quiet. She heard voices through thin doors, a man shouting, a woman crying, a clerk's bored tone. Then she saw the shadow move at the end of the hall. The Specter stood near a doorway labeled Evidence. A lock hung on the door. The Specter touched it. The lock didn't break in a loud way. It simply stopped being locked. The door opened. Annie's eyes widened. The Specter stepped inside. Annie crept closer, heart hammering. Inside the evidence room, boxes stacked high. Labels, tape, seals. The Specter moved along the shelves like it could smell lies. It stopped at one box. It lifted the lid. Inside was a plastic bag with a small gun. The Specter's head tilted. Annie couldn't see its face well, but she felt something like disappointment. A few steps away, a clerk's voice came from the hallway. "We lost the footage. Again." "Yeah, I know. Don't ask me. Ask the boss." The Specter's shoulders stiffened. Annie realized what it was doing. It wasn't here for street fights. It was tracing the chain. Arrest, evidence, court, punishment. It was looking for the place where justice should work, and it was finding holes. The clerk kept talking, laughing softly, like losing evidence was a joke. Annie's hands curled into fists. The Specter moved again. It placed the bag back. It closed the box. It sealed it in a way that looked final, like it was fixing what someone had broken. Then the Specter turned toward the door. Annie stepped back into shadow fast, trying not to be seen. The Specter passed her by, silent. For a second, Annie almost spoke, but the Specter didn't feel like something you interrupted. It walked out of the courthouse. Annie followed. Outside, the Specter paused at the steps and looked down the street toward the vote patrols. Annie whispered, "You're hunting the system." The Specter didn't answer. It stepped into the darkness between two buildings and vanished. Annie stood there, chest tight, thinking one simple thought. If vote controlled the law, then the Specter would either fight the law, or the law would try to turn the Specter into a weapon. Either way, someone was about to push too hard. And when you push an idea too hard, it can snap. Sister Sage watched a different set of screens that night. Not the public ones, the hidden ones. She watched courthouse cameras, police body cams, street cameras, drones. She looked for one thing: patterns. When did the tall figure appear? When did it vanish? What did it ignore? What did it fix? A VOD analyst beside her said, "It's not predictable enough." Sage didn't look at him. "It is predictable." "You're asking the wrong question," the analyst swallowed. "What question should I ask?" Sage's eyes stayed on the footage of the evidence room door opening. "Ask what it values," she said. She marked timestamps, places, people. She watched the Specter stop violence. She watched it enter the courthouse. She watched it touch the lock. Then she watched it seal the evidence box. Sage's lips pressed together. "It's not just a fighter," she whispered. "It was a judge, not in a legal way, in a deep way. A system that appeared when systems failed." Sage opened a new file on her tablet. She typed a title, "Control the Definition." Then she typed 3 words under it: law, crime, hero. She looked up at a map of the city, dotted with lights. "Fine," she murmured. "If it wants a clean chain, we will give it one." She tapped her headset. "Ashley." Ashley's voice came back strained. "What?" Sage spoke calmly. "I want a new directive by morning. I want VOT security partnered with local police in writing. I want new arrests under public safety. I want to label specific targets as threats." Ashley's voice tightened. "Targets like who?" Sage's eyes stayed on the map. "The ones who embarrass us," Sage said. "The ones who resist." Ashley hesitated. "Starlight." Sage cut in softly. "Not yet." She smiled faintly. "First," Sage said, "we bait the Specter with something it cannot ignore." She tapped another screen. A list of names from camps. A list of missing people. A list of potential witnesses. "We will move someone," Sage said. "Someone innocent. Someone useful." Ashley's voice went low. "A hostage." "A test," Sage corrected. Ashley swallowed. "And if Homelander—" Sage's voice stayed cool. "Homelander will be given a public win. He will feel worship. He will feel safe." Ashley sounded sick. "And the Specter?" Sage's eyes hardened. "The Specter will be forced to choose," she said. "Either it protects the innocent and looks like it is helping criminals," she paused, "or it protects the law and becomes what it hates." Sage ended the call. She sat back, still calm, but inside her, a simple truth pulsed. If the Specter was an idea with fists, then the only way to beat it was to trap the idea, not the body. 2 nights later, Butcher stood in the rain under a bridge, watching a street corner through binoculars. A Vote patrol car idled nearby. A pair of guards stood outside it, laughing, eating something from a paper bag. Huey stood beside Butcher, miserable, soaked, and trying not to shiver. "I hate this," Huey whispered. "I hate the rain. I hate the smell. I hate—" Butcher handed him a second pair of binoculars. "Shut up and watch." MM stood behind them, scanning the area like he was the only adult in a room of troublemakers. Frenchie and Kimiko were further back, near the van, checking weapons and gear. Huey peered through the binoculars. The corner was quiet. Then a man stumbled out of an alley, face bruised, clutching his side. 2 other men followed him, laughing, one holding a knife. The victim begged. The knife guy shoved him. The Vought guards on the corner glanced over. They didn't move. Huey's mouth opened. "What the hell?" Butcher's voice was low. "They're letting it happen." MM muttered. "That's not how any of this is supposed to work." The man with the knife shoved the victim again, harder. The victim hit the ground. The knife went up. The streetlight flickered once. The alley shadow thickened, and the tall figure stepped out like it had been waiting behind the world. Huey's heart jumped. Even through binoculars, it felt like the figure looked straight at him. The knife guy froze. The other guy backed up. The victim stared up, eyes wide, like he couldn't tell if this was help or another nightmare. The tall figure moved. It grabbed the knife wrist and twisted. The knife dropped. It shoved both attackers down, fast and clean, not killing, stopping. Then it crouched by the victim. Its voice was lower now, less dramatic, almost normal. "Can you stand?" it asked. The victim nodded shakily. The Specter helped him up like it was nothing. Then it turned its head toward the Vote guards. The guards had finally decided to act, but not the way Huey expected. One of them lifted his gun, pointing at the tall figure. "Hands up!" the guard shouted. "Now!" Huey's stomach dropped. Butcher's grin appeared. "Here we go." The Specter didn't raise its hands. It didn't rush them either. It just stared. The guard's voice shook. "You heard me?" The second guard stepped back, nervous, and Huey noticed something scary. The bystanders watching didn't yell at the guards. They didn't yell at the attackers. They just watched like it was a show, like none of it mattered. The Specter tilted its head, as if it felt that numbness in the air. Then it stepped forward. The guard fired. The shot should have hit, but the Specter wasn't there. It appeared behind the guard, grabbed the gun, and yanked it down. The gun fired again into the pavement. Sparks flew. The Specter pushed the guard's shoulder and forced him to his knees. It spoke in that deep tone again. "Why did you allow harm?" it asked. The guard panted. We're not allowed to. We got orders." The Specter's coat rippled like smoke. "Orders are not justice," it said. Huey's phone buzzed in his pocket. He didn't look. He couldn't. Butcher lowered the binoculars and started walking forward. MM grabbed his arm. "No." Butcher didn't stop. "We need to talk to it." MM's grip tightened. Not like this. Butcher yanked his arm free. Like what? Over tea? Huey swallowed. Butcher. Butcher kept walking. The rain hit his shoulders and ran down his coat like the city was trying to wash him away. He stepped out from under the bridge and into the streetlight. The Specter's head turned toward him. The guard on the ground looked relieved, like Butcher was a normal problem compared to the shadow thing. Butcher raised both hands. Slow. All right, Butcher called out. Easy. The Specter didn't move. Butcher walked closer, stopping a few steps away. He smiled like he was greeting someone at a bar. You like stopping bad people? Butcher asked. The Specter's voice came calm. I stop harm, it said. Butcher nodded. Great, because there's this bloke. MM cursed under his breath behind them, but stayed back. Huey stood frozen, watching like his body forgot how to move. Butcher continued. He flies. He smiles. He hurts people for fun. The Specter's head tilted again. You mean the one who claims authority, it said. Butcher's smile widened. That's him. The Specter's voice stayed even. He is a threat. Butcher took a breath, as if he'd just heard music. Then we're on the same side, Butcher said. The Specter didn't agree. It didn't refuse. It looked past Butcher toward MM and Huey in the shadows. Then it looked at the Vought guards. Then it looked back at Butcher. You smell of violence, the Specter said. Butcher's grin flickered. Huey felt his throat tighten. Because it was true. Butcher was violence with legs. Butcher lifted his chin. Yeah. And I pointed at the right targets. The Specter's voice dropped, heavy. Targets are not justice, it said. Butcher's smile hardened. Don't get cute, mate. In this world, you don't get clean choices. The Specter's coat rippled again. I'm here because this world is losing the idea of stopping crime, it said. Huey's stomach twisted. The Specter continued. If you force me to fail, the loss spreads. MM stepped forward finally, voice firm. Then we don't force you. We help you. The Specter turned toward MM. MM held his hands open, like Annie had done. We're not Vought, MM said. We're trying to stop them. The Specter stared. Then it asked, simple and scary. Then why do you break rules? Butcher barked a laugh. Because the rules are made by monsters. The Specter's head tilted. You want me to be your weapon, it said. Butcher didn't deny it. I want you to end him. The Specter looked at him for a long moment. Then it spoke, calm but final. I will not be owned, it said. Butcher's grin turned angry. Who said anything about owning? The Specter stepped back into shadow, half fading. Its voice stayed clear. I will act when harm rises, it said. Don't try to leash me. Then it vanished. Just like that. The rain kept falling like nothing had happened. Huey exhaled, shaky. MM glared at Butcher. You pushed too hard. Butcher stared at the empty shadow and muttered, Yeah. He looked up at the Vought guards again. They were standing now, confused, rubbing their wrists like they'd been manhandled by a ghost. Butcher's eyes narrowed. They'll go after it, Butcher said. And if they cage it? MM's face darkened. Then the city gets worse, MM finished. Huey's phone buzzed again. He finally looked. A message from Annie. I saw it in a courthouse. It's following the justice chain. Something big is coming. Huey stared at the words. Then his phone tried to add a suggestion underneath. The Specter. Huey whispered, Stop! But the suggestion stayed, like the word wanted to be said. The next day, the headlines changed. They always did. Vought didn't just sell heroes. It sold fear and relief in the same package. The screen behind the morning hosts now read, Public Safety Act. New powers to protect you. A smiling politician stood beside a VOT spokesperson and nodded like a bobblehead. Due to recent threats, the politician said, we are expanding emergency authority. VOT security will assist local law enforcement. Annie watched from a small apartment with the curtains half closed. She felt sick. This was Sage's work. She could feel it like a cold hand. If VOT became law, then VOT could decide what crime meant. And if the Specter chased crime, they would try to point it. Annie's phone buzzed. Huey, they're making VOT cops. This is bad. Annie typed back, yes, it's a trap. She stared at the screen again. The politician said, we will not allow vigilantes to interfere. Annie's jaw clenched, because she knew who they meant. Not just the boys, not just Starlight. They meant the tall figure too, even if they didn't say the name yet. VOT didn't like things it couldn't buy, and the Specter was something money couldn't touch. Annie grabbed her jacket. She couldn't just watch. Not now. That night, the city looked brighter than it should have. VOT had brought in new floodlights around key places, courthouses, police stations, camp perimeters, big intersections. They were trying to erase the dark. They were trying to erase the spaces where the Specter liked to stand. Annie walked the edge of a new safety zone and felt anger rise in her throat. A VOT patrol car rolled by. The guard inside stared at her like she was something to catalog. Annie kept her head down and moved on. She reached an alley behind a police station. She had heard something from a contact, a quiet rumor. Evidence was being moved tonight. Not logged, not signed, not legal. A clean chain was being cut. Annie crouched behind a dumpster and watched the back door. 2 officers came out with a rolling cart, boxes stacked high, tape, labels. A VOT security team waited beside a black van. No sirens, no lights. Just quiet theft, dressed like procedure. Annie's heart hammered. Then the air shifted. The shadow at the end of the alley deepened. The tall figure stepped into view. The Specter. It stared at the boxes like they were screaming. The officers froze. One whispered, "No, not here." The VOT team leader lifted a weapon. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He spoke like someone reading a policy. "Unidentified individual," he said. "You are interfering with an authorized operation. Stand down." The Specter's voice came calm. "This is theft," it said. The team leader smirked. "It's evidence transfer." The Specter took one step forward. The team leader raised his weapon and fired a bright flare of light. It wasn't a bullet. It was a burst of white, like a camera flash turned into a weapon. The alley lit up like noon. Annie squinted. The shadows got thinner, and for a moment, the Specter's edges flickered like a signal losing strength. Annie's stomach dropped. They were testing it. The team leader barked, "Keep the lights on it!" 2 more guards raised handheld flood lamps and aimed them at the Specter. The Specter didn't scream, it didn't panic, but it did hesitate. Like the dark it used was being pushed back. The officers used the moment. They shoved the cart toward the van. Annie's hands shook. She wanted to blast light at the guards, but that would only help them. More light meant less shadow. The Specter's voice dropped, heavy with strain. "Do not prevent the act," it said. The team leader laughed. "Prevent what? Your little hobby?" Annie flinched at the word hobby. Like justice was a game. The Specter's coat rippled. Darkness gathered under the van, under the wheels, in the thin line where light didn't reach. It wasn't gone. It was adapting. It stepped into that narrow strip of dark and moved like it was sliding through a crack. 1 second it was in the alley. The next, it was beside the cart. It grabbed the top box and yanked. The box ripped free. Papers spilled. The officers shouted. The team leader fired another bright flare. The light hit the Specter's chest. The Specter's edges flickered again, sharper this time. Annie saw it clearly now. This wasn't about muscles. This was about conditions. They were trying to force it into failing its own job. And Annie could feel the danger of that, even without knowing the full rules. If you keep an idea from doing what it exists to do, the idea breaks. The Specter's voice came out deeper, like thunder in a small space. If you cage this function, it said, the city will forget why harm must be stopped. The team leader didn't care. Good. Then we win. Annie's stomach turned. The Specter grabbed the cart and shoved it back, away from the van. The officers stumbled. The team leader swung his weapon like a baton and hit the Specter's shoulder. The hit didn't make a normal sound. It sounded like striking a thick curtain. The Specter turned its head slowly toward the team leader, and Annie felt fear in her bones. Not because the Specter looked angry, because it looked disappointed again. It stepped forward. It took the weapon from the team leader's hand with one motion and snapped it in half. Then it pointed at the spilled papers. "Return them," it said. The team leader backed up, eyes wide now. He hadn't expected the thing to break his tools. Annie saw the shift in him. He didn't see a vigilante anymore. He saw a problem, a real one. He touched his earpiece. Plan B. Now. Annie's heart dropped. Plan B meant bigger. Plan B meant Homelander, or a soup team, or something worse. The Specter's head tilted, like it heard the signal too. It looked down the alley. Then it looked toward the city, toward the camps, toward the bright lights. Annie realized what it was thinking. It wasn't just responding now. It was tracking a chain. And the chain led somewhere. Somewhere Vought didn't want anyone to look. The Specter stepped back into shadow and vanished again. The officers breathed like they'd survived a storm. The team leader barked, "Get the boxes in the van! Move!" Annie stayed still, hidden, heart pounding, because she knew what the Specter would do next. It would follow the chain. And if it found the end of it, this city was about to see what real justice looked like in a world that didn't want it. The warehouse sat in an industrial zone near the river, where the streetlights were spaced too far apart, the kind of place where you could scream and nobody would hear. But tonight, there were too many vehicles to ignore. Black vans, unmarked trucks, a few police cars, Vought logos hidden but present if you knew where to look. From a rooftop 2 blocks away, lay flat and watched through a scope. Butcher crouched beside him, chewing gum like it was a weapon. Huey stood behind them, trying not to make noise with his breathing. Frenchie and Kimiko waited near a fire escape, ready to move. Annie had joined them 10 minutes ago, slipping in like a ghost with a hood and a hard stare. She looked at Butcher. "This is your plan?" Butcher shrugged. "This is Vought's plan. We're just invited." Murmured, "No jokes. This is serious." Huey swallowed. "What is it?" Annie spoke quietly. "A holding site. Not official. Not on paper." Butcher's grin showed. "Exactly." MM's eyes stayed on the warehouse doors. "What are they moving?" Annie shook her head. "I don't know. But it's connected to camp transfers and evidence gaps." Frenchie muttered. "A secret inside a secret." Kimiko's hand signed fast. Frenchie translated, "People." Huey's stomach twisted. "Always." A truck backed up to the loading bay. The rear doors opened. A group of guards came out first, weapons ready. Then 2 men dragged someone between them, a person in a hood, hands bound, feet stumbling. Huey leaned forward. "Is that?" Grabbed his shoulder gently. "Stay calm." Annie's jaw clenched. "That's not a soup escort. That's a hostage escort." Butcher's eyes narrowed. "So what's the play?" Didn't answer because the air changed. The space under the loading bay shadow deepened. It shouldn't have, with all the floodlights. But it did anyway, like darkness was being poured in from somewhere else. A tall figure stepped out from beneath the truck. The Specter. Huey's breath caught. Even from far away, the sight made his skin prickle. The guards froze. One shouted, "Lights! On it!" Flood lamps swung toward the Specter. A bright cone hit its chest. The Specter's edges flickered. Huey clenched his teeth. "It does affect it," Annie whispered. "It slows it. It doesn't stop it." The Specter stepped forward anyway. The guards raised weapons. A Vought soup stood near the bay doors, bored. Arms crossed. Not Homelander. Someone lower tier. A muscle Supa with a helmet and a smug stance. He cracked his knuckles like he wanted a reason. The Specter looked at the hostage. Then it looked at the guards. Then it looked at the soup. Its voice carried even from far away, low and clear. "Release them." The Supa laughed. "Nah." He stepped forward, ready to swing. The Specter moved first, not rushing the soup like a normal fighter. It slid into the shadow under the flood lamp stand, then appeared beside the soup's blind spot. One clean strike to the back of the knee. The soup's leg buckled. He snarled and spun, throwing a heavy punch. The punch hit empty air. The Specter was already behind him again, grabbing the helmet strap and yanking. The helmet snapped off. The soup's face showed, surprised and angry. The Specter struck his jaw once. The soup dropped to a knee, dazed. The guards stared, shocked. Huey whispered, "That was so fast." Butcher's grin widened. "It's not playing." MM's voice went tight. "It's trying to end harm before the hostage gets hurt." On the bay, a guard panicked and raised his gun at the Specter. Annie whispered, "No!" The guard fired. The Specter didn't dodge like a superhero. It stepped into the bullet's path and caught it. Not in a flashy way. The bullet simply stopped. It fell to the ground like a piece of metal that had forgotten what it was supposed to do. Huey's eyes went wide. "Did it?" Frenchie breathed. "It denied the act." Kimiko's hand signed again. Frenchie translated softly, "It makes violence feel pointless." Huey felt his stomach sink, because he could feel it too, even from here. A weird numbness in the air, like the idea of shooting someone was suddenly stupid. The guards hesitated. Then the floodlights brightened again. A second line of light snapped on from the warehouse roof. Too bright, too planned. Huey's chest tightened. They're trying to erase every shadow. Butcher's smile faded. "Sage." Annie's voice went cold. She built a cage out of light. On the bay, the Specter's edges flickered harder. It didn't fall, but it slowed. It looked at the hostage again. The hostage stumbled, trying to breathe through the hood. A guard shoved them. The Specter's head snapped toward the guard. Its voice dropped, heavier than before. "Do not," it said. The guard flinched like he'd been slapped by sound, but he didn't stop, because someone behind him shouted, "They're terrorists! They're dangerous! Move them!" The words came out loud on speakers, broadcast to the street, to the cameras, to the city. Annie's stomach turned. They weren't just moving a hostage. They were labeling the hostage. They were feeding the world a story. And the Specter was being forced into a corner. If it saved the hostage, Vought would show the world. Look, it helps criminals. If it didn't, the hostage would suffer, and the Specter would fail its purpose. Huey whispered, "That's the trap." MM nodded slowly, face tight. Either choice costs it. Butcher's eyes burned. "So we changed the board." He started to stand. MM grabbed him. "No, not yet." Butcher jerked free anyway. "I'm not letting Vought write the ending." Annie's eyes narrowed. If you rush in, you make it worse. Butcher looked at her, furious. Then what do we do? Watch! Annie's voice stayed steady. We pick a point. We break the lights. We make shadows. We give it room. MM's gaze sharpened. That's smart. Huey blinked. Wait, we're going to help the shadow thing by making it darker? Butcher barked. Welcome to the weirdest day of your life, Huey. Frenchie lifted a small device from his bag. I can make the lights go away. Huey stared. Is that a bomb? Frenchie shrugged. It is more polite to call it a tool. Kimiko signed quickly. Frenchie translated. She says hurry. MM took a breath. Okay, we do this clean. No civilians. No random deaths. Butcher smirked. Clean, he says. MM shot him a look that could cut steel. I mean it. They moved. Fast. Quiet. Focused. Annie slipped down the fire escape, keeping to shadows like she was born there. Frenchie and Kimiko followed, low and silent. MM and Butcher took the street route, staying behind parked cars and dumpsters. Huey stayed with MM because he had no other safe place to be. As they got closer, the sound of the speakers grew louder. Terrorists! Danger! Public safety! Vought was making sure the word crime filled the air. On the bay, the Specter stood in the light cage, flickering, still trying. It stepped toward the hostage again. A guard shoved the hostage toward the warehouse door. The Specter moved to follow, and a bright strobe hit it in the face like a flashbang. The Specter halted, not out of fear, out of pressure. Huey felt his skin crawl. He could sense the city's mood shifting. People watching from nearby buildings weren't yelling, "Stop." They were whispering, "Maybe Vought is right?" And in that whisper was poison. Because if enough people believed the lie, then the idea of crime fighting could be twisted into something ugly. Annie reached a utility pole near the floodlight controls. She looked up, eyes narrow, then climbed like she didn't care about falling. Frenchie crouched by a junction box with shaking hands, smiling like a man who enjoyed puzzles. Kimiko stood guard, eyes sharp. MM and Butcher slid into position near a truck. Huey crouched beside them, heart pounding so loud he thought it could be heard. Butcher muttered, "On your mark." Annie's voice came through a small earpiece Huey didn't remember putting in. "Give me 10, Frenchie whispered. 9. Huey blinked. "Why are we counting down?" Butcher glanced at him. "Because it sounds cool." MM hissed, "Shut up." On the bay, the hostage tripped and fell. A guard kicked them in the ribs. Huey's stomach lurched. The Specter stepped forward, its coat rippling like it wanted to become night itself. But the strobe hit again. The Specter froze for half a beat. And Huey saw something he didn't like. Not weakness. Pain. Not physical pain. Purpose pain. Like being forced to watch harm and not stop it. The Specter's voice came out low. Thick. "If you prevent me," it said, "you teach the world that harm has no answer." The guard laughed nervously. "Good." Butcher's hands clenched. MM's jaw tightened so hard Huey thought it might crack. Then Annie's voice came sharp in Huey's ear. "Now!" Frenchie slammed his tool into the junction box. Sparks flashed. The nearest floodlights went out. A stripe of darkness cut across the loading bay like a curtain dropped. The strobe died. For the first time in minutes, the bay had real shadows again. The Specter's edges stopped flickering. It straightened. It moved. It stepped into the new shadow and appeared beside the guard who had kicked the hostage. One clean motion. The guard's legs went out. He hit the ground and didn't get up. The Specter grabbed the hostage's arms and lifted them gently, setting them upright. The hostage gasped through the hood. The Specter turned toward the warehouse door. More guards rushed out. But now they hesitated, because the air felt different. Like violence was suddenly embarrassing. like pulling a trigger was childish. Some guards still fought the feeling and raised guns. The Specter looked at them, and the guns began to feel heavy in their hands. Not magically glued, just heavy like guilt. Butcher moved then, rushing forward with using the confusion. Annie dropped from the pole and sprinted in, light flaring from her hands just enough to blind cameras, not enough to erase shadow. Kimiko hit the first guard like a storm, fast and silent. Frenchie shoved a door open and yanked the hostage toward cover. Huey stumbled after them, mind spinning. This was insane. They were working with a shadow thing against Vought cops, but the scene in front of him was clear. Vought was hurting someone helpless, and the Specter was stopping it. That part made sense in Huey's bones. In the chaos, Butcher looked up and saw the Specter watching him. Not angry, not trusting, just watching. Butcher shouted, "We're getting them out!" The Specter didn't nod. It didn't thank him. It simply turned and stepped between the team and the warehouse door, like a wall. Because new footsteps were coming, heavier ones. A cape fluttered in the wind outside. Huey's blood went ice. He didn't need to see the face to know who it was. Homelander had arrived, and this time, the cameras were ready. The floodlights that still worked swung toward the sky. A spotlight found him like the world was pointing. Homelander hovered above the bay, smiling big. "Hello," he called, voice bright. "What's all this?" His eyes flicked down. He saw Annie. His smile sharpened. He saw Butcher. His smile sharpened more. Then he saw the tall figure in the coat standing in the shadow line, still and calm. And the smile vanished. Just a little. Just enough. Homelander descended slowly, like he wanted to make every second hurt. He landed with a heavy thump, his eyes locked on the Specter. "You again," Homelander said, voice low. The Specter didn't move. Homelander glanced at the hostage being pulled away. He called out louder, for the cameras. "Those are terrorists!" The word hit the air like a hammer. Huey felt it. The trap closing. People watching from nearby buildings would hear that word and decide what they believed. Homelander pointed at the Specter. "And that thing," he said, "is helping them." The Specter spoke, calm and clear, louder than before. "It is helping an innocent," Homelander laughed. "Innocent? Says who? You?" He stepped closer. The Specter didn't step back. But Huey noticed something. The Specter's attention kept flicking to the hostage, to the guards, to the harm, not to Homelander's ego. Homelander noticed that too. He hated it. He leaned in, voice dropping, just for the Specter. "You don't get to ignore me," Homelander hissed. The Specter's voice stayed even. "You are not the center," it said. That was the worst thing anyone could say to Homelander. His eyes flared red. Annie raised her hands, ready. Pulled Huey behind a truck. Butcher's grin came back, wild, like he wanted this. Homelander's beams snapped on, and the Specter vanished into shadow right as the heat cut through the air. The beam sliced a hole through a warehouse wall. Fire burst inside. People screamed. Homelander's eyes widened, furious, as he realized he'd caused collateral damage on camera. He snapped his head, searching for the Specter. The Specter appeared behind him, close enough to touch, but it didn't punch him. It didn't try to win the ego fight. It pointed at the burning wall. "Stop the harm," it said. Homelander's face twisted. For a second, he looked like he might actually help, just to prove he was the hero. Then his eyes flicked to the cameras. He smiled again. And Huey understood the real danger. Homelander didn't want to stop harm. He wanted to own the story of stopping harm. Homelander raised his hands and blasted cold air from high-speed flight, pushing smoke back, making it look like he was saving the warehouse. He turned to the cameras, smiling big. "There," he he said. Handled. Then, without looking, he whispered toward the shadow behind him. And now, I handle you. The Specter's coat rippled. The air thickened. The shadows gathered under trucks, under boots, under broken lights. Homelander's eyes flared again. But before he could fire, the Specter demanifested. Gone. Not fleeing like a coward. Leaving like a rule that refused to be trapped in a story. Homelander froze, staring at empty air, breathing hard. The cameras caught it. The crowd watching from far away saw it. Homelander's jaw flexed. He turned, smiling too wide. "Run all you want," he said, voice bright for the cameras. "I always catch what I want." But Huey saw the truth in Homelander's eyes. He wasn't promising. He was begging the universe not to make him look small. Annie grabbed Huey's sleeve. "Move!" They pulled back fast, dragging the hostage away through the dark streets. Behind them, Homelander stood in the floodlights like a statue that wanted to scream. And somewhere in the city, in a courthouse hallway, in an evidence room, in a camp fence shadow, the Specter was still tracing the chain, because Vought had tried to cage it, and the city was already starting to forget what stop was supposed to mean. 2 weeks later, Huey could tell the city was changing by the way people looked away. It was small things at first. A woman dropped her wallet at a crosswalk. A teenager scooped up the cash and jogged off. 2 people saw it. They didn't shout. They didn't chase. They just sighed, like it was weather. A man got shoved into a wall outside a train station. His bag hit the ground. Someone grabbed it. Nobody helped. A security guard watched and pretended he didn't. Huey hated that most of all. Not the crime, the shrug, the idea that nobody even tried anymore. He walked fast with his hood up, keeping close to buildings. Vought security patrols were everywhere now. Their uniforms looked cleaner than cops. Their guns looked newer too. He passed a big poster on a bus stop. Vought security. "We stop threats," Huey muttered. "Yeah." "You stopped the wrong ones." His phone buzzed. "Annie. Meet at the old place. 20 minutes. Huey typed, "Okay. Also, my phone is still dramatic." As soon as he hit send, his phone suggested a word underneath, like it was excited. The Specter. Huey groaned. No, not today. He tried a different contact name for the group chat. Coat Guy. His phone didn't fight him on that. Huey felt a tiny win and held on to it like it mattered. When he reached the safe house, Butcher was already there. Of course he was. Butcher sat at the table with a beer he didn't need and a grin he didn't deserve. Stood near the window, watching patrol cars roll by like he was counting them. Frenchie was fiddling with a small device that looked like it could ruin a city block. Kimiko sat on the counter, legs swinging, eyes sharp. Annie stepped in last, rain on her jacket. Jaw set hard. Huey shut the door behind her. Annie looked at all of them and didn't waste time. "Vought is tightening the law," she said. "They're making arrests for public safety. They're moving people again." MM's face darkened. "Camps," Annie nodded. "And they're using the Specter's name without saying it." Butcher snorted. "They're scared to say it out loud?" Annie shook her head. "No. They're using it like a ghost story. A vigilante threat. An unknown terrorist supporter. They're teaching people to hate it." Huey's stomach twisted. "And it's working." MM pointed at Huey. "What do you mean?" Huey swallowed and tried to keep his words simple. "People are acting like stopping bad stuff is optional," he said. "Like it's not worth it. Like it's not even real." Frenchie's eyes flicked up from his device. "Yes," Kimiko signed quickly. Frenchie translated, "It is spreading." Butcher's smile faded a little. "That thing said something like that, didn't it?" Annie nodded. "It warned me. It warned all of us, really. If it's blocked enough, the idea breaks. People stop believing harm can be stopped. MM's hands curled into fists. So Vought's plan is to trap it, blame it, and let the city rot. Butcher leaned back. Sounds like Vought. Huey looked at Annie. Have you seen it since the warehouse? Annie's eyes went distant for a second. 3 times. She held up 3 fingers. Once near a courthouse, she said. It went in. It came out. Nobody noticed until afterward, when a missing evidence box was suddenly back where it was supposed to be. Frenchie let out a short laugh. It is. Correcting. Once near a police station, Annie continued. A patrol was about to beat someone. The cops were watching. The Specter appeared. The batons dropped. Like their hands forgot how to swing. MM breathed out slowly. And the third? Annie's face tightened. A camp perimeter. A transfer van. The lights were too bright. It flickered. It still got 1 kid out of the line. Then it vanished. Butcher's eyes narrowed. So it's still acting? Annie nodded. But it's strained. I can feel it. The air around it. It feels like it's pushing against something heavy. Huey whispered, like the city is pushing back. Annie looked at him. Exactly. Butcher leaned forward. So we help it. MM shot him a look. You mean you use it? Butcher didn't flinch. Call it what you want. Homelander's still out there. Vaught's still out there. And that thing is the first thing I've ever seen that made him look unsure. Huey's throat tightened. That's why Homelander's been worse. Annie's hands clenched. He's been doing rescues every day. With cameras. He's trying to drown the Specter out. Frenchie muttered. Attention is his oxygen. Annie looked at Frenchie like she didn't love that he was right. MM leaned on the table. Okay. We need a plan that doesn't make this worse. Butcher's grin returned. Sharp. We already have a plan. MM's eyes narrowed. What plan? Butcher looked at Annie. You said the Specter follows the justice chain. Annie nodded slowly. Butcher tapped the table. Then we show it the real chain. The people who made the camps. The people who move evidence. The people who write the law to protect themselves. MM shook his head. That's politics, Butcher. That's not a guy you can punch. Butcher's smile didn't move. Maybe it can. Huey felt his chest tighten, because he could see where this was going. Butcher wanted a simple ending. A body on the ground. A monster gone. The Specter didn't feel like a simple ending. It felt like a rule that didn't care what Butcher wanted. Annie took a breath. I can talk to it again. Butcher scoffed. Talk? Annie's eyes snapped to him. Yes, talk. Because it listens. And because if we push it like a weapon, we might become what it stops. Silence. Even Butcher didn't have a quick joke for that. MM nodded once. Annie's right. Butcher's jaw flexed. Fine, you talk. While you talk, I plan. Annie didn't argue. She just grabbed her jacket tighter. Huey's phone buzzed again. A news alert. Homelander to address the nation tonight. Live. Huey looked up. He's doing a speech. Annie's face tightened. That's not normal for him. Frenchie's eyes narrowed. If he speaks, it is because Sage wrote the words. Butcher stood. Then we go. MM frowned. Go where? Butcher smiled. Where the story is. Homelander stood in a bright studio that looked like a church for cameras. The floor was polished. The walls were clean. The lights were so strong you could almost taste them. Sister Sage watched from behind the cameras, hands folded, expression calm. Ashley hovered nearby, sweating through her suit jacket. Homelander smiled at his own reflection in a monitor. Perfect hair. Perfect face. Perfect symbol. He didn't feel perfect. He felt watched. Not by people. People were easy. People were loud animals who wanted a hero to love. He felt watched by the thing in the coat. It had refused him twice. It had stood close enough to touch him and still treated him like a side problem. Homelander hated that more than punches. Ashley cleared her throat. "We're live in 30. Homelander didn't look at her. "Good." Sage stepped closer, voice soft. "Remember, calm, strong, kind." Homelander glanced at her. "Kind?" "Yes," Sage said. "Kind wins. Kind looks safe. Safe is control." Homelander's smile tightened. "Control." Sage nodded. "You are the only one who can protect them from chaos." Homelander's eyes flicked toward a monitor showing shaky footage of the Specter on a street at night. Sage followed his gaze. "I'm handling it," she said. Homelander's voice dropped. "It's making people whisper." Sage's face stayed calm. "Then we teach them what to say instead." Ashley jumped in fast. "We'll call it a threat." "A vigilante." Homelander's eyes flared just a little. Ashley shrank back. Sage spoke smoothly. "Tonight, you will make them feel safe, and you will make them want the Public Safety Act even more." Homelander stared at her. "And the thing?" Sage's eyes stayed steady. "The thing is predictable. It reacts to harm. It reacts to law enforcement losing control at night." Homelander's jaw flexed. "So we stop losing?" Sage nodded. "On camera," Ashley swallowed. "And off camera?" Sage's smile was faint. "Off camera, we redefine the board." A countdown appeared on the monitor. 10, 9. Homelander breathed in, breathed out. 8, 7. Sage watched him like she watched math. 6, 5. Ashley's hands shook. 4, 3, 2, 1. A red light on the camera blinked. Homelander's smile turned on like a switch. "My fellow Americans," he began. Voice warm and bright. "We've seen troubling events in our streets." Across the city, Annie watched the speech from a dark room with the others. Huey sat on the floor, knees pulled up, trying not to feel sick. Homelander's voice poured out of the TV like honey over knives. He talked about safety. He talked about order. He talked about dangerous vigilantes who interfere with justice. He never said the name. But Huey could feel the space where the name should be, like a missing tooth. Annie's jaw clenched. Butcher smiled like he was watching a villain confess. Looked tired. Frenchie and Kimiko watched without blinking. Homelander's tone shifted, just a little. "And to the people hiding in the shadows," he said, looking right into the camera. "I have a message." Huey's skin prickled. Homelander smiled wider. "You can come work with us," he said, "or you can keep running. But either way, I will keep this country safe." Annie whispered. That was for him. Nodded. "He wants a response." Butcher leaned forward. "Then let's give him one." Annie stood. "Not like that." Butcher's eyes narrowed. "Then how?" Annie took a breath. "We find the Specter. We don't bait it with Homelander. We show it the truth and let it choose." Butcher scoffed. "It already chose. It stopped harm. That's what it does." Annie's eyes hardened. "Then we stop being one more person trying to point it." Butcher's grin turned cold. "Good luck with that." Annie didn't answer. She grabbed her hood and walked to the door. Huey stood too. "I'm coming." Annie glanced at him. "You don't have to." Huey swallowed. "Yeah, I do." Stood. "We all do." Butcher grabbed his coat. "Now you're talking." 2 nights later, Annie found the Specter where she least wanted to. A cheap apartment building. Old paint. Broken lights in the hallway. A stairwell that smelled like trash and damp. A woman on the 2nd floor screamed through her door. A man shouted back, drunk and furious. Something slammed. Glass broke. 2 neighbors listened from behind their own doors, and did nothing. Annie climbed the stairs fast. Huey followed, breath quick. Was behind them. Butcher stayed lower, watching the exit. Annie reached the second-floor landing and stopped. The hallway shadows were thicker here, even with the flickering light. And the Specter stood near the screaming door like it had been waiting. It didn't move. It didn't kick the door down. It listened. The man inside shouted, "You can't tell me what to do!" Annie felt anger spike. The Specter's head tilted, slow. Then it spoke, voice low. "Open!" The door handle turned by itself. The door swung inward. The man inside froze, eyes wide, fist raised. The woman behind him cried, face swollen. The man looked around, confused. Then his eyes landed on the tall shadow in the hallway. Fear hit him. He stepped back. The Specter entered the room without rushing. The man swung. His fist passed through empty air, not because the Specter was intangible, because it moved like a shadow slipping between frames. The Specter grabbed the man's wrist and twisted. The man yelped and fell to his knees. The woman backed away, shaking. The Specter didn't hurt the man further. It just held him down like a rule. Then it turned toward the woman. Its voice softened, almost normal. "Go," it said. The woman ran past Annie, sobbing, not even looking at her. Annie's throat tightened. The Specter looked at Annie then. "Why are you here?" it asked. Annie held her hands open. "Because they're trying to trap you," Huey blurted. "And because my phone won't stop yelling your name at me." Annie shot him a look. Huey winced. "Sorry?" The Specter's head tilted, like it was trying to understand why that mattered. Annie stepped closer. Slow. "Vought is rewriting the law," she said. "They want to call innocent people criminals. They want to call resistance crime. They want to make you stop the wrong people." The Specter's coat rippled. "It is already happening," it said. Huey swallowed. "We can feel it. People are giving up." The Specter's voice dropped, heavier. "That is the fracture," it said. "A world that believes harm is normal will become a world that cannot be saved by simple stops." Spoke, calm but firm. "Then help us fix the chain, not the street fights. The chain." The Specter looked at him. "Chains are made by those with power," it said. Annie nodded. "Exactly. And those people hide behind badges and laws, but you don't have to obey badges. You can obey what's right." Butcher's voice came from the hallway, sharp. "Or you can help us kill the worst one." Annie's shoulders tensed. Butcher stepped into the doorway, face hard, eyes bright. He looked right at the Specter. "Homelander, you know him. You know what he is." The Specter turned toward Butcher. Its voice was even. "He is a threat," it said. Butcher pointed at the man still pinned on the floor. "Then stop him, like you stopped that." The Specter's head tilted. "This is immediate harm," it said. "That is larger harm." Butcher snapped. "Harm is harm." The Specter's voice stayed calm, but it hit like a wall. "No," it said. "Justice is not rage with a target." Butcher's jaw tightened. "You calling me rage?" The Specter looked at him, and for a second, Huey felt like the hallway got colder. "You smell of violence," it said again. "You want permission to use me?" Butcher's grin turned bitter. "I want results." Annie stepped between them, quick. "Stop, both of you." She looked up at the Specter. "I'm not asking you to be a weapon," Annie said. "I'm asking you to be what you already are, but with eyes open. This world lies. The uniforms lie. The laws lie. If you follow them blindly, you become their tool." The Specter stared at her. Then it asked something simple that made Annie's chest tighten. "What do you want from me?" Annie swallowed. "I want you to protect people," she said. "Not brands. Not badges. People. The Specter didn't answer right away. It looked down at the man on the floor, still restrained. It looked at the bruised marks on the woman's face. It looked at Huey and Then it looked at Butcher. "I will not join you," it said to Butcher. Butcher's face hardened. "Fine." The Specter turned back to Annie. "I will not join anyone," it said. Annie's throat tightened, disappointed. Then the Specter continued. "But I will act," it said. "Where harm rises, where the powerless are crushed, where authority wears justice like a mask." Annie exhaled slowly. "That's enough," Huey whispered. "Is it?" The Specter looked at him. Its voice softened again, almost tired. "It must be," it said. "If I try to be owned, I break. If I refuse to act, the world breaks." Butcher scoffed. "Poetic." The Specter didn't react to the insult. It stepped back into the hallway shadows. Before it vanished, it said one more thing, aimed at all of them. "You want to win," it said. "Then show the world what is true. Do not merely punch what you hate." Then it demanifested. The hallway light flickered once, and the air felt a little lighter, like a rule had decided to keep trying. Sister Sage didn't sleep much, but even she noticed the shift. Not because the city became kind. It didn't. But because her numbers changed. Assault reports dropped in some blocks with heavy shadows. Weapons were forgotten in hands. Guns felt heavier. People hesitated. And then, worse for Vought, evidence started appearing where it should not. A missing file returned to a courthouse desk. A sealed box showed up in a locker no one could open the day before. A witness who had disappeared turned up at a hospital with a note that simply said, "Protect this one." Sage stared at that note for a long time, not because she was scared, because she was annoyed. This was a system that wouldn't stay inside the lines. Ashley barged into Sage's office, face pale. "It's ruining our narrative," Ashley hissed. Sage didn't look up. "It is correcting your narrative." Ashley's voice rose. "You know what I mean." Sage finally met her eyes. "Then say the true thing. It is making us look like what we are." Ashley's mouth opened, then shut. Sage leaned back. "We proceed," Sage said. "We escalate the definition." Ashley swallowed. "How?" Sage tapped her tablet, showing a new plan. A transport route, a set of floodlights. A group of suspects, a set of cameras. "We create a public incident," Sage said. "We label the targets terrorists. We make the law loud. We make the lights brighter than ever." Ashley's eyes widened. "You want to trap it again?" Sage nodded. "Not the body. The meaning." Ashley's voice trembled. "And if it saves them?" Sage's eyes stayed calm. "Then we show the world it helps criminals." "And if it doesn't?" Ashley whispered. Sage's face didn't change. "Then it fails its function, and the fracture grows. Either way, we win." Ashley looked sick. Sage watched her quietly. This was the difference between them. Ashley needed to feel clean. Sage only needed the outcome. The night of Sage's public incident, the city felt like it was holding its breath. Vought security blocked off 4 streets near a bridge. Cameras were everywhere. Floodlights turned the pavement white. Homelander hovered above it all like a god at a parade. He smiled down at the crowd gathered behind barricades. "Don't worry," he called. "I'm here." Huey watched from an alley with Annie, Frenchie, Kimiko, and Butcher. His heart pounded so hard he felt it in his throat. "Okay," Huey whispered. "So their plan is..." cut him off. "We know the plan. Focus." Annie stared at the floodlights. "They're killing every shadow." Frenchie held up his device. "I can make some shadows." Butcher smirked. "Do it." Snapped. "Not yet." Kimiko pointed toward the bridge. A truck rolled into view. The back doors were chained shut. A Vought announcer voice boomed over speakers. "Suspected terrorists are being transported for public safety processing," the crowd murmured. Some people shouted insults. Others just watched, eager for a show. Huey felt sick. "Are there really people in that truck?" he whispered. Annie's face was tight. "Yes." Butcher's eyes burned. "And they're bait." Homelander descended slowly, landing beside the truck like he was posing for a poster. He put a hand on the truck door, smiling at the cameras. "You see?" he said. "This is what safety looks like." His eyes flicked toward the shadows of the nearby buildings, searching. He wanted the Specter to show. He wanted to beat it on camera. He wanted the world to watch him win. And then the air shifted. Even with all the light, Huey felt it. A pressure change. A cold line across the skin. The narrow shadow under the truck deepened. The Specter stepped out from beneath the chassis like darkness had teeth. The crowd gasped. Phones shot up. Someone whispered the name. Of course they did. It came out dramatic, like the air demanded it. Homelander's smile widened. "There you are." The Specter didn't look at him at first. It looked at the truck. It listened, like it could hear breath inside. Then it spoke, low and clear. "Open it." A Vought officer shouted. "Stand down! This is a lawful transport!" The Specter turned its head. "Lawful is not the same as right," it said. Homelander laughed. "Oh, come on. Don't get all spooky moral on me." He stepped closer, eyes bright with heat. "You want to be a hero?" Homelander said, voice loud for cameras. "Then do it the right way. Join us." The Specter finally looked at him. "I do not serve you," it said. Homelander's smile twitched. He leaned in, voice lower. Dangerous. "You're in my country," he said. "On my streets." The Specter's voice stayed even. "These are not yours," it said. "They are theirs." It gestured toward the crowd. That made Homelander's eyes flare. But before he fired, the Specter moved. It stepped into the thin shadow cast by a floodlight pole and appeared beside the truck doors. It touched the chain. The chain didn't snap loud. It simply unlocked, like the chain forgot it had been made for force. The doors swung open. Inside, people blinked against the light, hands bound, faces bruised. Not terrorists, just frightened human beings. The crowd saw them. Some people went quiet. Some people looked confused. Homelander's smile stayed on, but his eyes sharpened. "Those people are dangerous," he announced fast. "They're trained." But the lie didn't land clean, because the scene looked too real. A kid inside the truck started crying. A woman whispered, "Please." The Specter stepped up to the truck bed. It spoke softly, almost normal. "Come," it said. It helped them down one by one, careful and steady. That was the moment Sage had predicted. The cameras captured it. The crowd captured it. Homelander's jaw tightened. He couldn't allow this to look like mercy. He pointed at the freed prisoners. "Stop them!" he shouted to Vought security. "They're escaping!" Vought guards moved in. They raised guns, batons, shock weapons. The Specter turned toward them, and the air changed again. Huey felt it like a wave, not fear. The opposite. A heavy sense of, why would you do that? The first guard hesitated. His hands trembled. The second guard tried to step forward anyway. His boot stuck for half a beat, like his own body didn't want to obey. Annie whispered, "It's pushing the feeling." MM nodded. "It's making violence feel wrong." But the floodlights surged brighter. New lights clicked on from rooftops. The shadows shrank again. The Specter's edges flickered. Huey's stomach dropped. "They're tightening the cage," Frenchie hissed. "Now?" clenched his jaw. Now. Frenchie slammed his device into a junction box he'd been eyeing. Sparks burst. A line of floodlights died. Darkness returned in stripes. The crowd gasped as the bright scene broke apart. And in the returned shadows, the Specter steadied again. Homelander's head snapped toward the sudden blackout area. His eyes flared red. "Who did that?" he roared. Butcher grinned in the alley. "Hi." Grabbed Butcher's collar. "Not yet." Homelander turned back to the Specter and fired heat vision. The beams cut through air, slicing a truck mirror, melting metal, carving a line in the pavement. The Specter vanished into shadow before the beams could hit. It reappeared behind the freed prisoners like a shield. It didn't punch Homelander. It didn't try to win his ego fight. It focused on the harm. Homelander realized that and hated it. He surged forward, grabbing a guard by the vest and throwing him aside just to clear his path. The guard slammed into a barricade. People screamed. Cameras caught it. Homelander didn't care anymore. He lunged at the Specter. The Specter sidestepped and struck once, clean, to Homelander's jaw. Homelander's head turned, just a little. But it happened again, and the crowd saw it. Homelander froze for half a beat, rage boiling. He swung, faster, harder, trying to make contact. The Specter slipped into shadow lines and kept repositioning, not running away, choosing angles that protected the prisoners and blocked Homelander from the crowd. Annie watched, breath held. It was insane. It was like watching a lion try to bite smoke that kept moving in front of the cubs. Sage's voice came through the loudspeakers then, calm and sharp. "This is your proof," the voice said. "The vigilante is aiding criminals. He is resisting lawful authority. He is a threat to public safety." The crowd murmured again, confused, split. Huey felt anger flare. "They're still trying to win with words," he whispered. Annie's eyes narrowed. "Then, we win with truth." Looked at her. "How?" Annie pointed toward a nearby Vought broadcast van. "That." Butcher's grin returned. "Now you're speaking my language." Sighed, already tired. "Fine. Clean and fast." Kimiko was already moving before the words finished. She slipped out of the alley like a silent knife, heading toward the van. Frenchie followed, carrying a small bag. Huey stayed close, shaking. "Butcher," warned. "Do not." Butcher patted M's shoulder like a joke. "Relax." They reached the back of the van. Frenchie popped a latch. Kimiko yanked the door open. Inside were screens, live feeds, storage drives. A nervous technician turning pale. Huey blurted, "Hi. Sorry. We're borrowing your secrets." The technician opened his mouth. Kimiko held up a finger. He shut it. Frenchie plugged his device into the system with quick hands. "What are you doing?" Huey whispered. Frenchie smiled, giving the city the receipts. On the bridge, the Specter moved again, now guiding the freed prisoners into the darkness where the lights had died. Homelander followed, furious, tearing through barricades. He grabbed one of the prisoners by the shoulder and lifted him. The prisoner screamed. Homelander turned to the cameras. "See? Dangerous," the prisoner cried. "I didn't do anything." Homelander's eyes flared. He was about to prove a point the worst way. The Specter appeared between them so fast, Huey's brain couldn't track it. It grabbed Homelander's wrist and forced it down. The pavement cracked under the pressure. Homelander snarled, "Get off me!" The Specter's voice was heavy. "Stop the harm," it said. Homelander screamed, "I am stopping it!" He fired heat vision, not at the Specter this time, but at the ground near the prisoners, creating a line of fire to corner them. The crowd screamed again. Annie clenched her teeth. He's going to burn them to make a point. Looked at Frenchie. "How long?" Frenchie whispered. 10 seconds. Huey's stomach nodded. On the bridge, the Specter looked at the fire line. It didn't panic. It stepped into the darkest edge under a broken light and reappeared inside the line, scooping 2 prisoners away from the flames and shoving them toward safety. But the floodlights surged again. Sage was tightening the cage again, trying to force failure. The Specter flickered hard. Huey saw it strain, not like a man getting tired, like a rule being bent too far. Homelander saw it too. His smile returned, cruel. "There," Homelander whispered. "You can't do your trick in the light." He grabbed the Specter's coat and pulled, trying to drag it into the brightest spot. The coat stretched like smoke and cloth mixed. The Specter's voice dropped, deep and dangerous. "Do not prevent the act," it said. Homelander laughed. "Or what? Your little concept breaks? Good." And then the broadcast changed. Every screen in the van flickered. Then the loudspeakers across the bridge cut out. Then a new video feed blasted on the big public screens Vought had placed nearby. It was raw footage, not polished. A camp gate, guards laughing while people cried. A vote officer saying, "Move them, no paperwork." A courtroom hallway. A clerk joking about missing footage. A warehouse bay. A guard saying, "Plan B, lights on it. Make it fail." Sage's calm voice, recorded, saying, "Either way, we win." The crowd went silent. People stared at the screens. Phones went up. Not to film the Specter now, but to film Vaught's lies. Homelander's head snapped toward the screens. His eyes widened. For the first time all night, his confidence cracked. Ashley's voice screamed through a headset somewhere, off mic. "Turn it off! Turn it off!" But it was too late. Truth had already hit the air. Annie watched the crowd's faces shift. Confusion, then anger, then something else. A small return of belief. The idea that maybe harm could be stopped. The Specter felt it too. Its flicker steadied. It wasn't just shadows helping. It was meaning. Homelander roared and blasted the nearest screen with heat vision. The screen melted, but the crowd had already seen it. The Specter turned back to Homelander. It didn't look proud. It looked firm. "You cannot rewrite reality forever," it said. Homelander snarled. "I can do whatever I want." The Specter's voice stayed even. "Then you are the crime," it said. That line hit hard. Not because it was a perfect insult, because it was a clear label. Homelander froze for a half-beat, rage boiling into something worse. He launched forward. The Specter vanished, reappeared, and struck again. Quick, clean. Redirecting Homelander away from the crowd. Not trying to win a duel, trying to stop harm. Butcher watched from the van doorway, eyes bright. "Finish him!" Butcher shouted without thinking. MM grabbed him hard. "No!" Butcher ripped his arm free. "He deserves it!" MM's face was tight, furious, and scared at the same time. "This isn't your revenge machine!" Huey's voice cracked. "Butcher, look at it! It's not trying to kill him!" Butcher stared at the bridge, jaw clenched. The Specter didn't kill. It stopped. It blocked. It pulled. It redirected. It made Homelander waste power and look careless. And every careless move on camera made Homelander smaller. That was the true damage. Homelander realized it too. He backed up a step, breathing hard, eyes darting. He looked at the crowd. Not worship anymore. Not pure fear either. Questions. Doubt. He hated doubt. He lifted into the air, eyes blazing, ready to scorch the whole area just to reset control. Annie stepped forward with both hands raised, light flaring. "Don't!" she shouted. Homelander glanced at her. His smile returned. Mean. "You want to defend it now?" Annie's voice shook but stayed strong. I want you to stop hurting people." Homelander's eyes flared. The Specter appeared near Annie, not touching her, but close enough that she felt colder air. It spoke to her. Low. "Move them," it said. Annie understood. She turned and shouted at the freed prisoners and the crowd near the barricades. "Back! Get away from the bridge! Now!" Some people listened. Some didn't. But enough did. MM and Huey started pulling people back too, using voices and hands, no guns. Kimiko guided people like a silent shepherd, eyes fierce. Frenchie kept the feeds uploading, hands shaking. Homelander hovered, torn between rage and the cameras now turning against him. Sage's voice came through a private channel in his ear, sharp. "Leave," she said. "Not now. We can rebuild. You stay, you look unstable." Homelander's face twisted. He hated being told what to do, but he hated looking weak more. He shot the Specter one last look. "Run," he hissed. "Hide in your shadows." The Specter didn't answer. It simply watched him like a judge watches a liar. Homelander blasted upward into the sky, fast enough to shake the air. He vanished into the night, fleeing without calling it that. The crowd watched him go. Then they turned their phones back to the ground, to the freed prisoners, to the guards who looked ashamed, to the melted screens, to the truth that could not be unseen. The Specter stood in the shadow stripe under the broken floodlights. It didn't raise its arms. It didn't demand praise. It didn't even look satisfied. It just looked like a rule that had survived a test. Annie stepped toward it, breathing hard. "Did we help?" she asked. The Specter's head tilted. "You helped the chain," it said. Huey stepped closer, voice small. "So what now?" The Specter looked at the crowd again. "Now the world chooses whether it wants to remember," it said. Butcher stepped forward. Anger and awe fighting in his face. "You could have ended him," he said. The Specter turned toward him. Its voice stayed calm. "Ending a person is not the same as ending a system," it said. Butcher's jaw tightened. The Specter continued. "And if I become your executioner, I become what I stop." Butcher looked away. MM exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for years. Annie nodded slowly. "So, you'll keep appearing?" The Specter's voice softened, almost tired. "I will act," it said. "Where harm rises, where lies where law." Then it looked at Annie, and for a second, it sounded almost human. "And where you still try?" Annie's throat tightened. She didn't know what to say, so she said the simplest thing. "Okay," she whispered. The Specter stepped back. The shadows under the truck deepened. It demanifested. Gone. Not because it was afraid. Because its job for this moment was done. And the city, for the first time in days, felt like it remembered the word, stop. A week later, the Specter sat in a dim room with the curtains half closed. The room wasn't fancy. It wasn't a lair. It was a quiet place someone had left empty. A small TV sat on a table. A game console hummed softly. The Specter held a controller in its hands. It stared at it like it was an artifact from a strange culture. On the screen, a colorful character ran in circles. The Specter pressed a button. The character jumped into a wall. The Specter pressed another button. The character spun and fell off a ledge. For a moment, the Specter just watched the little character tumble. Then it spoke, low, as if to itself. "This is inefficient." A phone buzzed on the table beside the TV. It wasn't the Specter's phone. It didn't own one. It was Huey's spare phone, left here because Huey thought the Specter might look at it sometimes, like leaving a note for a storm. The screen lit up with a message. "Huey, you there?" A second message came fast. "Huey, also sorry for calling you Coat Guy. It was that or my phone doing the other thing. A third message appeared, and the letters looked bigger than they should have. The Specter. The Specter stared at the screen. It didn't touch the phone, but the air around it felt aware. Outside, the city made night sounds. A distant siren, a car door slamming, someone laughing too loud, a dog barking. The Specter looked back at the TV screen where the little character stood at the edge of a bright cartoon cliff. It pressed the button again, gentler. The character jumped the gap this time. It landed safely. The Specter paused, not proud, just noting the result. The phone buzzed again. "Annie, patrols are moving near the courthouse. Something feels wrong." The Specter's head tilted. It listened, not to the phone, to the world behind the words. In the distance, a different kind of noise started. A shout, a crash, a scared voice. The Specter stood. It set the controller down carefully, like the small human hobby mattered. It looked at the dark corner of the room where the light didn't reach. Its coat edges shifted like smoke, remembering its shape. The Specter spoke once, quiet and simple. "Harm rises." Then it stepped into the shadow, and the room was empty again, except for the TV, the phone, and the small, bright game character waiting at the next gap.